Thanks for watching today. We're going to go through some slides and show you how to create a home for birds at your home, right where you live. Okay, birds need the same things we do. They need food, shelter, safety, ability to reproduce. So what we're going to do is talk through suggestions in all these areas so that you can contribute to the success of wild birds by the way you manage your home and your lifestyle. More than 800 species of birds occur in the United States, and in Oregon, some of them live here year round and some of them migrate. So we will have some migrate down from Alaska and Canada and spend the winter in the Willamette Valley. And we will have some of the Willamette Valley birds migrate down to Central and South America. Did you know that ospreys take separate vacations? And so an osprey, male and female, will part for the winter, go down to Mexico and South America and come back and find the exact same nest along the Willamette River or wherever they nested last year. We count birds in our backyard, and so far we have 84 birds, including flyovers. Some birds are mostly seed eaters, some of them are mostly berry and fruit eaters, but all of them feed animal proteins of some sort. Their diets are limited by the shape of their beaks. So carnivorous birds will have long pointed beaks or curved beaks, like eagles have a curved tip on their beak, whereas seed eaters like finches and sparrows will have a larger wedge-shaped beak. And so you can almost look at the bird and tell what kind of food they're going to like. But they all want caterpillars or insects to feed their babies, or if they're born altricial, precocial birds like ducks, they are ready to eat. They don't need to be fed, but they all need some kind of meat protein in order to grow. Author Doug Tallamy said that he thinks that a chickadee feeds its nestlings up to 570 caterpillars a day. By the time the birds have left the nest, that adds up to about 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars. So it pays to leave caterpillars in your backyard and put up with chewed leaves and chewed stems. Not only birds want to eat caterpillars, but butterflies used to be caterpillars. So another reason to put up with chewed leaves and chewed stems is so that our butterflies can reproduce. Our native trees that support butterflies are big leaf maples. You can see they support swallowtails. And when we see a flush of swallowtails in the springtime, most of those are only going to live about 10 to 14 days. That's a very short time. We can plant Pearly Everlasting and Douglas Aster and bring in American ladies. Not everybody knows that alder trees are the caterpillar food for pale swallowtails, but you can read down the list: madrone, huckleberries, oak trees. Oak trees are probably the most important plant in the whole Willamette Valley. They probably support more than 1,000 different life forms. It's easy for you to plant checker mallows. Most people don't remember grass is important. Skippers all eat, caterpillars all eat grass. So this list gives you some ideas of what plants that you would want to encourage in your backyard to grow caterpillars, not only to grow butterflies, but to grow birds, baby birds. So in our yard, we get a lot of robins and cedar waxwings and bluebirds eating berries and invertebrates and not seeds. So what provides for the food for them in the fall and winter? We live near Joseph Street and the Holly Farm. And so one year I got permission to walk through the Holly Farm in the winter. Right now, if you drive by the Joseph Street fruit stand, Olson's fruit stand, and stop in their parking lot and look in the Holly Farm, it's filled with thousands and thousands and thousands of robins, which is pretty cool. But those robins are pooping out their seeds and spreading holly where it doesn't belong. So we're going to start learning about alternatives that have nice red berries, but don't, if the robins spread them, so what? So also, if we do a bird survey in the winter out in the fields of Polk County, and there's robins all over out in those fields, well, we don't have that many robins here in the summer. So those robins are coming down from Canada and Alaska because we're a little bit warmer, and they're poking around in those grass seed fields for worms and bugs and whatever. All right. So native plants that produce berries. So this is not a robin. This is a berry thrush. It pretty much looks like a robin, but it's not. So things that we have in our property are twinberry, Oregon grape, native blackberry, blueberry, snowberry, mountain ash, huckleberry, thimbleberry, salal, wild rose, cranberry, and osoberry, and currant. So you can provide a lot of berries for these wintering birds on your own property. And a lot of these things you can get from cuttings and putting, the stems in the ground. And some of them you can buy rooted already at plant sales. And more of the year-round nurseries are starting to carry native plants. One time, Ray and I went on a trip to Eastern Oregon, and we saw a flock of cedar waxwings in an apple tree. And we thought, what are they doing? Well, they were eating petals. They weren't ruining the blossoms, but they were eating petals. So a quick look on the internet, sure enough, part of the diet of cedar waxwings is flower petals. Who knew? So pick up a camera and start looking for opportunities, and you learn things you wouldn't have learned otherwise. Things that we don't want are things like nandina or heavenly bamboo. Those berries can contain cyanide, and if a cedar waxwing is having trouble finding food it prefers, it may eat this as a food it doesn't really prefer. And if it gorges on it, we may kill birds. You certainly don't want kids eating those berries, although even a lot of native plants have toxic principles to them. So that's not the only reason for not having this plant. But when you could have something equally pretty, why not plant it? So red osier dogwood provides berries in the fall, and the leaves feeds 100 species of butterflies and moths, so think caterpillars. This is what we have in our backyard, twinberry honeysuckle. And I really like it because at the same time, it'll have berries and flowers on the same plant. It just proceeds up the stem. And you can whack it back and share it with your neighbors, and you can turn it into a hedge. You can let it grow wild. It doesn't mind being severely pruned. Ours is sprawling, so it's time to share. So if you want some trimmings, put your name on the list in the back and tell me what you want. But I have more twinberry honeysuckle to share than you can imagine. And hummingbirds like it as well. So our swallows are going south for the winter, and they're coming up here. And if they don't find a cavity to nest in, they're stuck. And because we have clean farming, clean forests, clean backyards, we don't leave snags. And so the woodpeckers can't peck holes on living wood and make a snag. So they need dead wood. And just from our own little experiment, we snagged some trees, and it wasn't until 5 years later that the woodpeckers found it suitable to peck holes in it. So really an overabundance of nest boxes is one way to help. And each bird has the opening prefers a certain size. You also want nest boxes with a hinge side so that you can open it and clean it. You don't want them just to be dirty year after year. So another thing about swallows is they need to get their bugs in the air. That's, as far as I know, that's the only place they eat is bugs that they catch in the air. So we occasionally will get white-throated sparrows, and they are migrating elevation-wise. So they may be down in the Willamette Valley in the winter at our feeder, and then in the summer, they're going up into the Cascades. These are also white-crowned sparrows and goldfinches, and we see those in our backyard a lot. One of my favorite websites is Cornell's University's All About Birds. So if you need to know something about a bird's requirements, visit the Cornell's All About Birds. If you don't know what bird you have, and you have a phone, and you can pick up the sound of the bird, and you have an app called Merlin on your phone, they will translate those bird sounds and tell you what bird you have. And is that amazing or what? So you don't even need your binoculars anymore if the birds are singing. But I encourage you to know what your birds are and know what their needs are. So that's why I'm giving you these resources. So I'm a retired veterinarian. I could not keep a bird feeder clean. I can barely get the dishes done in the day. So we have devised spreading food out on the ground, different locations, not always, where they've been pooping, here and there, all over the place. And there's some advantages to that. One, you don't have a feeder to clean. And two, everybody gets to eat. There's no fighting. Sometimes we'll have 200 birds at once in our backyard, all eating at the same time. And they couldn't do that with a feeder. If you can keep your feeders clean every day, then don't use wood feeders. You can't keep them clean. So you hear about these feeder-borne diseases and people say, take your feeders down. That's crazy. Just quit using feeders. Spread it out all over the place, different place all the time. And yes, you'll get rats and mice, but only put what they'll eat in a short period of time. Don't put a whole day's worth of food out. Just put 30 minutes worth of food out, but be consistent. The other thing is snakes. Snakes, they're going to provide food for your hawks and owls. So, snakes are good and snakes are going to eat your slugs. So, Ray put down this piece of fiberboard and you lift it up, and most times you lift it up, you'll find garter snakes under there. And if I trap mice from the garage, I'll go lift that board up and throw a few mice under there, and the next day they're gone. So I have sort of pet snakes, not really. So what about gophers? I was telling the earlier people that we have a gopher that's lived very happily all winter long in my camas patch. So I know he's eating all those camas bulbs, but I will not kill that gopher. So that gopher is food to all the birds of prey that can see it. So hawks and owls and eagles. Can you imagine how many gophers it would take to raise nests of eagle babies, or how many it would take for red-tailed hawks? So if you can encourage the right nesting habitat, even if you trap your gophers, throw them over the fence in the field or something where a coyote is going to get it, but don't use poison. If you poison, especially with the blood thinner type poisons, you will kill the next thing that eats that gopher. So we were part of a eagle watch. And in Eastern Oregon in Bend, people were watching the eagles, the golden eagles, from their binoculars from their porch. And all of a sudden they weren't feeding babies anymore. And somebody hiked up, got the dead babies, had them analyzed at the lab, and they died of rat poison because they lived near a city. People were poisoning rats with the blood thinner type of poisoning, and it got transferred to the babies and they hemorrhaged to death. So whenever you poison something, whoever eats that something will also get poisoned. And some of these poisons are cumulative. Some of them are enough to kill the host immediately. Ray came up, this is Ray's garden, my husband in the back, he is quite the gardener. And over time, we've evolved to stock tanks up on blocks with holes drilled. And for some reason, our little dog can jump up there and chew the sprinkler heads, but the gophers can't seem to find their way up there. Also, as you get older, you don't want to bend over to garden. So these are quite expensive now, but on Wilco, they get sales. So, we've gotten them in 3 or 4 waves as they come on sale, but that's one way to avoid gophers or to coexist. You can make wire cages to surround your gopher resistant plants, and evidently gopher wire doesn't decay as fast as chicken wire. So you can make a form and then plant your plants in the ground in that form and keep gophers away. Cassie Ruth was a gardener at Illahee, and she took me around and knew where the great horned owl was, and immediately she found this casting. So owls swallow the rodent whole and separate the good parts from the bad parts and vomit it back up. And you can see how many little rodent bones are in there. There are books that teach you how to make nesting platforms. Owls don't make their own nests. They take over other people's nests. So, a red-tailed hawk or an eagle may construct a lot of different nests and rotate through using them to, I think, let the old nests clean up a little bit. And so they'll have maybe 4 or 5 nests in an area. Well, when they're not using them, somebody who can't build their own nest but requires one will use it. So you might find a great horned owl in a place like that. But there's a book in the back that tells you how to make nesting platforms and nest boxes for all species. And if you had a suitable tree, you could put up a platform and a few sticks and an owl just might move in. I go owling by listening to birds. If I hear birds scolding really bad, you look around and usually they're scolding an owl. So that's how I find owls. So this is red elderberry. So this is an alternative plant to something like holly, and you can see how pretty the bloom is and how pretty the berries are. And evidently, seed germination improves after passing through the digestive tract of animals. So this is in our backyard. This is hummingbird, female anise hummingbird, nectaring from showy milkweed, and plants, nectar and insects comprise their diets. So if you're going to use a hummingbird feeder, you need to make the sugar water up fresh every day, that you don't store it, it gets moldy, and use the clamshell type feeders that you can wash in the dishwasher. If you use a tube one, you're not really getting it clean, I don't think. So we have lots of feeders. If it's frozen, we just simply make up new food immediately and bring in the frozen one and put out the other one. I'm afraid if you're using a heater and not paying attention to it, you're also going to encourage mold. So basically, you try to make things as clean for animal consumption as you would eat yourself. So what do spiders have to do with hummingbirds? There's a hummingbird nest back there on a piece of gorse, and someone gave that to me. So hummingbirds use the silk from spiders to create their nests, and ounce per ounce, silk is a very strong fiber. It's an extremely strong fiber. So we need to tolerate our spiders as well. So you can supplement their diet with seeds or plants, or leave plants up all winter. So if you were going to feed like that, you could bring in that plate every day and wash it, So we grow sunflowers and leave the heads and feed birds for quite a long time. So this is a chickadee, and these are goldfinches, and you can stagger your seed planting time so you have plants maturing into the fall. I did some research about mistletoe. I know people like to take mistletoe out of trees, and evidently the mistletoe that is in evergreen trees is detrimental to the tree. But this oak is, hundreds of years old, and it seems to be doing just fine with the oak mistletoe. A graduate student did a thesis on what likes mistletoe, and it is a major food for Western bluebirds in the winter. So encouraging mistletoe, or at least not discouraging it, is a good idea. Sapsuckers do damage trees. I'm not sure that they really kill trees. I think trees can heal those wounds, but it's interesting that as the sap drains out, it will attract insects, and then they'll increase getting insects in their diet, but it also attracts hummingbirds. So you will find hummingbirds following sapsuckers, so they get their natural source of sugar water. Is that clever or what? Bush tits, people see bush tits swarming at their suet and then they're off to something else. I don't think that they are seed eaters. I think they're entirely insectivorous. You can see this nest. It's like a long sock, and it's made of spider webs and plant material and moss. And clear at the bottom of this long sock is where the babies are. And I've got this picture on the rail trail at Ankeny one year. And so as you're, going hiking and whatnot, keep your eye out for bush tit nests. But they are cosmopolitan. They'll be right in your driveway if you have a big enough tree. Oops, looks like we have an English sparrow or house sparrow in our building here. The males have black eyes and the females have white eyes. I don't know if you can see that on the picture, but you could tell if you had males or females. And actually, even though there's one mated pair per nest, several birds will be helper birds feeding the babies. In the winter, birds have a hard time finding enough calories. So this is our suet feeder in the backyard, and we don't mind who eats it. In the summer, we certainly don't want starlings coming in. So our suet sets in an extra cage that has holes that are just the right size to keep starlings out. And it's just a round basket with a lid that comes out, and you put your suet in the middle, and we got it at Wild Birds. I like making suet at home. So in the back, there's a recipe that you can take home. And basically I line a pie pan with baking parchment, and I put in equal amounts of peanut butter and Morel's lard from the grocery store. And then I start adding things that I think are useful: cornmeal, chicken scratch, millet, dried mealworms, And back when I ate eggs, I would boil eggshells and grind up eggshells and put about a teaspoon of eggshell per recipe. But I quit eating eggs. So don't worry if you have Cooper's hawks. Your Cooper's hawks eat birds, so you're going to have a few birds coming in. If they're not all concentrated at one place, like at a bird feeder, it might make it a little more fair, but those Cooper's hawks are pretty good at catching birds. So allowing native and non-native plants to go to seed will naturally feed birds. So this is evening primrose. And we got some from the coast. We just dug up a wild plant and brought it home, and now we have evening primrose everywhere. I like it because it opens in the evening, and we got hawk moths or hummingbird moths coming to it. But it also it feeds birds in the winter. So these are goldfinches eating the seed pods. And I went out and collected some seeds still, and I just collected a stalk and I shook it on the counter, and there were 1 million seeds. So I swept them up and put them in envelopes, and you can have free seeds from the back. My favorite native plant is Wyethia or narrowleaf mule's ear. It's related to balsam root, and it attracts monarch butterflies, but the seeds in the winter feed all kinds of birds. So here's a little goldfinch eating the seeds at Heritage Seedling Seed Production Farm. Linda wishes they didn't eat seeds, but alas, they do. Another one is goldenrod, solidago. That's another fall blooming plant or late summer. That's good for our pollinators, and but the seeds are also good for birds. So if you're going to put up nest boxes for kestrels, bluebirds, swallows, today we put them in the shade because of global warming. Putting a perch out allows raptors to hunt and keep a watch out for voles, mice, rats, and gophers. So you'll see people putting perches out in odd places. Also, a perch next to a nest box like that helps them stage before they fly in and out. If you have raccoons in your area, you can put a piece of pipe. You can hang a piece of pipe. You can also have a lid that extends over so that a raccoon can't reach in. And on the outside of the nest box, you can put a little extender. So there's actually a little tunnel that goes into the nest box instead of just a flat opening, so a raccoon can't reach in. But if you don't have raccoons, you don't need to go to that much trouble. So Ray and I monitor nest box on Heritage Seedlings farms, and we used to put nest box out in the field for swallows and bluebirds. Ray, being the scientist he is, he put in nest box monitors one summer and monitor the temperature, and the temperature would get at least 20 degrees hotter than the ambient temperature. And I went online, and I think maybe 101, it starts killing chicken eggs. So it's probably about when it would start killing bird eggs too. So if it's getting up to 120 or so, it's going to start killing birds. So we couldn't really move some of those boxes. So we used a power stapler and stapled aluminum foil wrong side out. And that kept the inside of the nest boxes a lot cooler. But now, if we have the option, we mount them on a tree or in the shade on a building, still facing their hunting grounds. So they don't have to go in through a forest to get to their box, because swallows won't do that. The swallows want to be here and looking out where they're hunting and coming here, but they don't want to go back there. So again, resources like Cornell University will tell you the natural history of the bird and help you decide how to make things more comfortable. We also don't place them up in trees anymore. We place them where we can get them. Even an owl will occupy a nest right here. You know, they don't need to be way up there where you're never gonna clean them or you would fall off a ladder. Cats are a big deal on birds. So this person, the Feral Cat Coalition in Portland, Audubon have a catio tour every fall in September, and you can sign up for it. During COVID, it was virtual. I'm sure they have recordings, and I went one fall, and we went in Portland from house to house to house. They had open houses, open backyards, and you saw how people kept their cats in. Those people, I asked every one of them, no one cared about birds, but they cared about their cats. They didn't want them getting lost, run over, eaten by a coyote, poisoned. So they were keeping their cats in. I wanted to hear about birds, but nobody was really aware. So there's some almost invisible netting. You can keep birds out of trees.
If your fence goes up and then has bars that go out, the cat can't go up the fence and get in. So you could have a fence and then you could string bars intermittently, and then you could use this almost invisible black netting and keep birds or keep cats in or out of wherever you want them to be. They can go up a straight fence, but as soon as it goes like that, they can't go up and over. So that's just a way to keep your cats safe. So people had $50 solutions and they had $6,000 solutions. They had little posters about how they kept their cats. Some people just used a little daylight basement window and a flip-flop door and a little cage. Some people did that just outside of those windows that go out like that from a kitchen, and they had a flip-flop door and a little cage. And cats really like to be outside and they really don't need to hunt. As a veterinarian, cats got lost, they got locked in garages, they got cat abscesses, they got run over, they got bitten by dogs, they got fleas. Cats are much more well cared for if they're confined somehow. They do enjoy being outside, but they don't need to roam, get lost. So if you don't care about the birds, at least care about your cats. So what do these birds have in common? The downy woodpecker, a screech owl, swallows, baby swallows, and baby bluebird, or there's swallow and baby bluebirds. I know those are not swallow babies because swallows line their nests with feathers, and there's no feathers in this nest. And I know only took pictures of bluebirds and swallows and wrens, so I know those are bluebird babies. What they have in common is the need for a nest cavity. Some birds build their nests out in the open, but cavity nesters, if there aren't enough dead logs and bluebird or woodpeckers to do their job, then they require us to make cavities for them. So here's flickers feeding babies. There's a northern flicker. These are bluebirds in a nest box bringing natural caterpillars. And these are bluebirds. We learned from our nest boxes that the male takes care of the babies when they fledge while the female is starting on another clutch of eggs. So we put dried mealworms out on a plate that I could keep clean. And I could also put a little water in there because these are dried mealworms and I didn't want to dehydrate the babies. And so I ordered these from Exotic Nutrition online, but you can get them at various stores around town. And so we learned that the male bluebird takes care of the fledglings. And then one year they had three separate nestings, and the teenager birds took care of the baby birds. So they all hang around. That was something we wouldn't have known. So there's that snag at our house, and there's Fred, the western screech owl, he used to live at our house, and then he moved down the street to a dead snag. This is a Bewick's wren. Wren nests have sticks in them and little brown eggs. Can you imagine? Ray made an article for Salem Audubon, and he took apart a nest and he counted how many thousands of sticks it was. And you can go to the archives of Salem Audubon's newsletters and find his article there. So this is Ray putting up a owl nest box at Heritage Seedlings Farms. We don't put them up on ladders anymore. We put them where we can reach them. And so the entry size is available online. It's available in those books, but this gives you an idea. So what you don't want is you don't want these guys. You don't want these house sparrows. They used to be called English sparrows. You don't want them in your area because they kill the birds. They will take over nests. They will peck the eyes out of bluebirds. They will break the eggs. And so you really don't want to encourage these invasive birds at all. You also want to leave the leaves. If you don't really need to mow, you'd rake them, you can mow over them and leave them in place. But in those leaves are spiders, snakes, worms, insects, birds, lizards. They all live in there, feed in there, and we haven't killed our grass yet by leaving the leaves. Some of them are ground nesters. So this is a junco nest that I filmed in a wild area at Illahee Golf Course because Cassie was taking me around, and they have some areas that they just let be. And we were watching the adult birds going back to the same place. We parted the leaves and there was a little nest of juncos. So most of our nesting is done by July. So if you can save your major lawn care till July or later, instead of January, February, March, April, May, June, you will disturb fewer birds. So this is a killdeer, and underneath her is all the babies hiding under her feathers, and they just build their nest out of a scrape right in a driveway. So you need to be careful. Usually they're out in farm fields, but their nests are just right out open. So there's a robin who nested on a platform that Ray put up in our RV cover. Robin's nests are always lined with mud, which is kind of interesting. And so there it is, scraping in the leaves. So you need to leave something for them to forage. So in Oregon, birds are nesting February through July. So our early nesters will be our owls. And so here we go. Schedule your hedge trimming and weed removal later in the year. And if you're going to remove vast quantities of blackberries or vast quantities of English ivy on your property, you need to be thinking about who is benefiting from that. Bees pollinating these ivy blossoms, birds eating the ivy berries, because that happens, or who's eating the blackberries. And so if it's just your property you're dealing with and there's none out around, you might just do it in yearly segments so that you don't vastly starve somebody. If there's plenty of blackberries and English ivy in the neighborhood, then you don't need to be so concerned. But make sure that you're putting in something of equal or greater value. You're replacing those blossoms that the bees have gotten used to. You're replacing those berries that the birds have gotten used to. Okay, spotted towhees live very well in parks and neighborhoods. They get really acclimatized to people, and they're either going to nest on the ground or close to the ground or in shrubs. So which habitat do you think is going to better support wild birds? I would propose that there's too much open space in this manicured lawn. They might go across the lake if there was a natural forest there, but so much trimming, so much shaping, that really doesn't favor any of our wild animals. This is our seasonal stream where we live. And what we did is we got rid of the blackberries without poison. We hired a crew to come in and cut and dig, and then we spot cut and dig or put flower pots over stumps to light starve them. And lo and behold, we had a whole natural understory that we would never have seen if we'd used herbicide. So the native roses came back, native blackberries came back, fringe cup came back, monkey flower came back. And so our little property is got vestigial plants that there's nowhere else in the neighborhood because everyone stripped it all away and made it what they planted, but still it's not what it was. So, and so there's a song sparrow and a towhee that's benefiting from our backyard. So this is who's flying around. This is the sparrow. They were introduced in 1851. Evidently they're mentioned in Shakespeare, and that was some reminder. They can fit in a nest box with a hole diameter 1.5 inch or larger. So you want it, if you've got these and you don't want a big nest box hole. There are nest box traps if you are up to trapping and killing birds. A diamond shaped opening of a certain size has been known to deter these guys. So Ray brought his book, Landscaping for Wildlife in the Pacific Northwest, and it's on the table back there, and it will give you hints on how to create nest box sizes to deter house sparrows. The other is European starling. I guess this was the Shakespeare enthusiast. Introduced starlings. Actually, where starlings are native in England, they are on the decline. They're in trouble actually there, but they have found open space and agriculture to their benefit here. But this tells they will also aggressively displace other birds. So several things disfavor birds. Cats, lack of habitat, window strikes, and lights left on all night. I don't have a slide about lights left on all night, but outdoor lighting that doesn't turn off, it's not on a motion detector, interferes with migration, birds get confused, it interferes with their sleep cycle, and it definitely interferes with night flying insects. Moths go to the lights and they don't eat, reproduce, do their thing. And so insects populations decline because of lights that are left on all night. So motion detector lights are your best thing. You know, we have them, you walk in, they turn on for 5 minutes, they turn off on their own. A man named Jeff Copion invented these window bird savers. You can make your own or you can order them up. Ray made this one. You can see these are parachute cord strands from a wooden bar and stretched over the window. You can see why birds would fly through that. Certain times of day, there's a reflection that looks just like a place to fly. So any number of stickers doesn't do it. Any number of anything else doesn't do it. You have to have bars that they can see that they think they can't fly through easily. You can draw them on with glass ink, or you can go down to the art store, the art department downtown, and there's ink that draws on glass. And so for our doors that open, where I don't want strings in front of the door, I put a ruler and a big long yardstick, and I just drew lines on the glass. And I put it on the inside, and occasionally I wash it all off and start all over again. But those are the two effective ways, narrow bars. And again, you can make them or you can buy them. Brush piles, I didn't take a picture of our brush pile, but Ray was so into brush piles. After we cleared out all the blackberries I was telling you about, he said, there's no brush piles. And we have quail. What are we going to do? So he talked the Boy Scouts who are collecting the trees that they sold, to delivering all those trees to our place. And I was amazed. And we had all these piles and piles, but they disappeared in about 3 to 5 years. The brush piles were all rotted. So you can keep adding to your brush piles. Quail will live in there. Snakes will live in there. Bumblebees will live in there. And so brush piles are good. Let's see. And these are some of the snakes that live in our backyard. And I'm very proud of them. I even saw garter snakes have live birth. And I even saw one with a big lump in her. So I knew she had a bunch of babies. And they like to live in the leaves. And here's a picture of a gray blue heron eating one. And there's a picture of a red-tailed hawk eating one. So if you're going to put out bird baths, mosquitoes have a 3-day life cycle from when they lay the egg until they are able to bother you. So if you have a bird bath, you need to be cleaning it every 3 days. Also, birds are going to be pooping in it. So cleaning it out is a good idea. Ray puts these graded paint trays with automatic sprinklers all over our property. And he has a hobby of putting trail cameras in front of them. And you would be amazed at how many critters, mammals and birds are drinking water, taking baths, coming to the paint trays. And the reason we use something graded like that is I had used an oil pan and we drowned a baby quail. It couldn't get out. So we used these graduated trays so that they can walk in and walk out. Also, I took a photograph of this stone-filled water source when I was on that catio tour. That's really good for bees, so bees aren't drowning. It's also good for baby birds, so they're not drowning. But whatever you use, you should be able to clean it out. If you have a major pond, 1, you can't keep it clean for poop, and 2, you may encourage bullfrogs, which are not native to our area. And they do eat small turtles, they eat baby birds, they eat whatever they can fit in their mouths. And the only way to get rid of bullfrogs in a pond is to drain the pond. So here's a nut on the right is a little outfit I did with a little solar operated sprayer and something shallow. And then the screech owl was visiting our neighbor in the middle of the night, and she called me, and I got pictures with a flash camera. So to find out more, you can visit the Cat Safe at Home website to find out about catios. In the back, there's a giveaway booklet, Native Plants from the Willamette Valley. You can also download it for free. And one of Ray's friends wrote this booklet for Portland, Oregon, on your renovation projects and who you would be disturbing at certain times of the year. So you can, if you're going to do something major and you don't want to be disturbing birds, this tells about the life histories. Oregon State University has a lot of catalogs that you can download for free. So gardening with native plants, harvesting rainwater, attracting wildlife, managing wildlife conflicts, living on the land, attracting birds of prey in streams and riparian areas. So I would suggest that you go on to the Oregon State University Extension catalogs and you can download all these for free. Eileen Stark has got a great book called Real Gardens Grow Natives, and she's a Portland resident. And she also has a website, and she has a blog that's really fun to follow. So, and Eileen Stark, I've listened to her speak, and she's a great speaker. And when Ray lived in Portland, she actually designed his wild backyard. So the books that Ray has on the counter are Landscaping for Wildlife and Woodworking for Wildlife. And these are bluebirds in our backyard. And thanks for watching. And that's the end. Okay. Okay. After all our Q&A, I'll start this video. It's 9 minutes long. You can leave, you can watch it. But once I click on it, it's going to be 9 minutes. It's called Our Backyard. And it shows the birds, but the last part of it shows our monarch raising experience. It shows monarchs coming out of the chrysalis. It shows how we tag them. And so I will leave that in the background after our Q&A. So any questions?
We'll start with in-person questions if there's anybody here who has one.
Okay. Yes. Dog got them, is that right? Yeah. Your own dog, some neighborhood dog? Well, you can sub-fence your yard. So when you're not there to watch, you can have a flip-flop door that comes into a smaller yard. And then you could have a wild area in the back and then a dog area closer to your house. So we actually have a dog area and a wild area because I don't want my dogs interfering with skunks, raccoons. So that would be the way I would do it. Kathy. Yeah, birds can get caught in bird netting. So anything would work, a chain link fence, I drive by the prison, and they have goes up like that and goes out like that. And that's chain link fence on that slanted area. This person used a netting, and yes, birds can get caught in small netting. I would probably use wire netting. I probably wouldn't use that collapsible plastic netting because I do think that birds get caught in that. But that was the picture I had. Yeah. And yet, yes. For keeping birds out of your garden? I don't think so. Well, it still would have to be, that close together. You'd have to have strand after strand after strand. If it's something they can fly by, they're going to fly by it. They are not afraid of it. They can become acclimatized to things just like that. So it's not going to spook them. It doesn't matter how shiny it is. They're just gonna fly around it. So you need to have something strips that they feel they can't fly through.
We
Yeah,
do have one question here on this chat. Are certain sunflower varieties better than others for birds?
I haven't heard that certain sunflower varieties are better from birds. I get shelled sunflower because I don't like cleaning up seeds, but that's it. I mean, I don't like the hulls all over the place, but yeah.
In planting sunflowers at your house, are there certain varieties that you choose? Or that
Well,
you're
I certainly wouldn't want a seedless variety, and I would want to maximize the number of seeds. So, but the big heads like that, they're 20 feet tall with stalks, and then you got to get rid of all that stuff. So I like the ones that have multiple flowers, and they're different colors of flowers. But you can see on the seed packet whether there's going to be seeds or not. And some of these things have been hybridized so that you're getting more flower and less seed. And you'll just have to pick. If you find something you like, save seeds and plant your own year after year after year.
Let's see, we have a question in the chat about, is it possible to get the slideshow emailed out?
I think you are doing a link.
Yes, we will have, this presentation will end up on our YouTube channel. And then we could also maybe get the slideshow and be able to email it to people. If you're interested in that, you could maybe drop your email in the chat, and then we would be able to get that to you.
Okay.